Captain Kim Tae-ho stared at the endless black of space through the bridge windows of his ship, the Baekdu. At 45 years old, he had seen more of the galaxy than most people could dream of. His weathered hands moved across the control panel with practiced ease. The soft hum of the ship's engines was like a lullaby to him after 20 years of exploration. "Captain, we're approaching the Kepler 442 system," announced Dr. Park Hee-jin from her station. The xenoarchaeologist was hunched over her screens, studying the star charts. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes showed the sharp intelligence that had made her famous back on Earth. Tae-ho nodded. "Any signs of life?" "Nothing on the main planets. Just rocks and gas giants." "But..." Hee-jin paused, frowning at her readings. "There's something strange about the fourth moon. I'm picking up some unusual energy readings." Lieutenant Choi Dae-sung looked up from his weapons console. The young officer was fresh from military academy, all sharp uniforms and eager energy. "Could it be natural?" "I don't think so," Hee-jin replied, adjusting her instruments. "The pattern is too regular, too artificial." Tae-ho felt the familiar tingle of discovery in his spine. After all these years exploring dead worlds and empty space, his instincts had learned to recognize when something was different. "Show me." The main screen lit up with a display of the moon's surface. It was a gray, lifeless rock covered in ancient craters, but in one large crater on the dark side, something glowed faintly. "There," Hee-jin pointed. "That energy signature. It's been going for, well, according to my readings, it's been active for centuries." Engineer Lee So-ra spoke up from her position near the engine controls. "Could be some kind of mineral deposit. Maybe radioactive crystals?" Tae-ho studied the readings. So-ra was good with machines, one of the best engineers he'd worked with. But she didn't have the experience to recognize what he was seeing. "No, this is something else. Something made." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments. Dae-sung shifted nervously in his seat. "Sir, our orders are to survey for minerals and report back. We're not equipped for first contact situations." "We're not making first contact," Tae-ho said, though his heart was beating faster. "We're investigating an anomaly. Big difference." Hee-jin was already running deeper scans. "Captain, this is incredible. The energy readings, they're not just random emissions. There's a pattern here. Almost like..." "Like what?" "Like a signal. A repeating transmission." The words hung in the air like electricity. Tae-ho had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy reading about space exploration. After decades of finding nothing but rocks and gas, here was proof that humanity wasn't alone. "How long has it been transmitting?" he asked. Hee-jin's fingers flew over her controls. "Based on the decay patterns in the surrounding rock, 800 years, maybe more." So-ra whistled softly. 800 years of continuous transmission? What kind of power source could last that long? "Only one way to find out," Tae-ho said, settling back into his captain's chair. "Set course for the moon. We're going down for a closer look." Dae-sung looked uncomfortable. "Sir, regulations state that any potential alien contact must be reported to Earth Command immediately." "And we will report it," Tae-ho replied calmly. "After we know what we're reporting, I'm not sending a message to Earth saying we found a glowing rock." The Baekdu changed course, its engines humming louder as they accelerated toward the moon. As they got closer, the energy readings grew stronger. Hee-jin worked frantically at her station, trying to decode the signal. "It's definitely artificial," she announced. "The mathematical structure is too complex to be natural. It's like a language, but not one I've ever seen." "Any response to our presence?" Tae-ho asked. "No. It just keeps repeating the same pattern over and over." The moon grew larger on their screens. It was about the size of Earth's moon, but darker, with no atmosphere to soften the harsh lines of its craters. The energy source was coming from the largest crater, a massive impact site that must have been formed billions of years ago. "Taking us into orbit," So-ra announced, her hands steady on the navigation controls. As they circled the moon, the crater came into view. Tejo leaned forward in his seat, hardly believing what he was seeing. There, half buried in the crater floor, was the unmistakable shape of a ship. It was huge, easily 3 times the size of the Baekdu. Its hull was dark metal that seemed to absorb light, covered in strange markings that might have been writing or decoration. One end was buried deep in the crater floor, while the other rose up like a broken monument. Scorch marks along its sides suggested it hadn't landed there peacefully. "My God," Heejin whispered. "It's a ship. An actual alien ship." Daesung was staring at the screen with wide eyes. "It's been here for 800 years?" "At least," Hyojin confirmed. "Maybe longer." The impact crater shows signs of extremely high-energy weapons fire. This ship was shot down. Sora was running scans of the vessel. "Hull appears to be intact in most places, and Captain, it's still powered. Whatever's keeping that signal going is inside that ship." Tejo felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. This was the kind of discovery that would change everything. Humanity had been searching for signs of intelligent life for centuries, and here it was, crashed on a dead moon, still calling out into the void. "Are there any life signs?" he asked. Ye-Jin shook her head. "Hard to tell through that hull material. But after 800 years? Probably not," Tejo finished. But something in his gut told him this wasn't just a dead ship. The signal was too purposeful, too persistent. Someone or something wanted to be found. "Sir," Daesung said quietly, "we should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions." Tejo looked at his young officer. Daesung was a good soldier, following protocol exactly as he'd been trained. But Tejo had learned that sometimes the right thing to do wasn't in any regulation book. "By the time a message reaches Earth and they send back instructions, we'll have been sitting here for 6 months, he said. "That signal has been waiting 8 centuries for someone to answer it. I think we can take a look." He turned to Sora. "Can you get us down there safely?" The engineer studied her readings. "The crater floor looks stable. I can set us down about 1 kilometer from the ship." "Do it." As the Baekdu descended toward the moon's surface, Tejo felt history turning beneath them. Whatever they found in that ship would change humanity's place in the universe forever. He just hoped they were ready for what they might discover. The Baekdu touched down on the moon's surface with a soft thud that echoed through the ship's hull. Outside the windows, the alien vessel loomed like a sleeping giant. In the harsh light of the system's star, they could see details that hadn't been visible from orbit. The ship was beautiful in a strange way. Its hull curved in smooth lines that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with internal light. Some sections of the hull had been torn open, revealing glimpses of corridors within. "Atmosphere readings?" Tejo asked as he checked his equipment. "None," Sora replied. "Complete vacuum outside. But the alien ship is showing some kind of atmosphere inside the intact sections." Heejin was already suiting up in her exploration. "Here. The hull material is incredible. My scans can barely penetrate it. Whatever civilization built this had technology far beyond ours." Daesung finished checking his weapons and sealed his helmet. "Sir, I still think we should wait for backup. We have no idea what's inside that thing." "That's exactly why we need to look," Tejo replied, attaching his cutting tools to his belt. "This might be our only chance to learn about whoever built it." The 4 of them made their way through the Baekdu's airlock and out onto the moon's surface. The gravity was light, making each step bounce slightly. Their boots crunched on the ancient dust that had been undisturbed for millions of years. The alien ship grew larger as they approached. Up close, they could see that the hull wasn't just dark metal. It seemed to shift color slightly, like oil on water. The symbols glowed brighter as they got nearer, as if responding to their presence. "The energy readings are getting stronger," Hyejin reported through her suit radio. "Whatever's powering this thing is definitely still active." They found a breach in the hull near what appeared to be the ship's midsection. The edges of the hole were smooth, not torn like battle damage. Sora ran her scanner over the opening. "These edges have been sealed somehow," she announced. "Like the ship healed itself after taking damage, there's atmosphere on the other side." Tejo peered through the opening. Beyond was a corridor that stretched into darkness, lit by the same faint glow as the hull symbols. The ceiling was high, built for beings much taller than humans. "Going in," he announced and stepped through the breach. The moment his boots touched the alien deck, lights began to appear along the corridor walls. They pulsed gently, creating a path deeper into the ship. The gravity inside was Earth normal, which surprised him. How are they generating gravity without rotation? Sora wondered as she followed him inside. Add it to the list of questions, Hyojin replied, her scanner beeping rapidly. This technology is centuries ahead of anything we have. They moved deeper into the ship, following the lighted path. The corridors were wide and tall, with smooth walls covered in more of the flowing symbols. Some areas showed battle damage, scorch marks and holes that had been partially sealed by the ship's self-repair systems. This ship fought hard before it went down, Daesung observed, running his hand along a particularly deep scar in the wall. The path led them to a large circular chamber at the ship's center. As they entered, the lights grew brighter, revealing something that made them all stop in their tracks. In the center of the chamber was a massive crystal, easily 3 meters tall, that pulsed with brilliant blue light. Around it, complex machinery hummed quietly. And suspended in a transparent pod next to the crystal was a figure. It was clearly not human. The being was tall and thin, with long limbs and pale skin that seemed almost translucent. Its head was larger than a human's, with features that were both alien and somehow familiar. Most importantly, displays around the pod showed that it was still alive. "My God," Hyojin whispered. "It's been in some kind of suspended animation." Taeho approached the pod carefully. The being's eyes were closed, but he could see the slow rise and fall of its chest. After 800 years, something was still keeping it alive. Suddenly, the being's eyes opened. They were large and dark, and they fixed immediately on Taeho. There was intelligence there and something else, desperation. The chamber filled with sound as hidden speakers came to life. The words were alien, but somehow the meaning began to form in their minds. The ship was translating. "You came." The voice was weak but filled with hope. After so long, someone finally came. Taeho felt his heart racing. This was it. First contact with an alien intelligence. "We received your signal. We came to help." The being tried to move but seemed too weak. "Signal? Yes. Warning. You must warn your people they are coming." "Who is coming?" Hyojin asked, stepping closer. "The hegemony," the alien replied, and even through the translation they could hear the fear in its voice. "They destroy everything, everyone. We tried to run, to warn others. But they found us." Sora was studying the machinery around the crystal. "This is incredible. This crystal is some kind of power source, but it's also a computer. It's storing massive amounts of data." The alien's eyes turned to her. "All our knowledge. Everything. We learned about them. Their ships, their weapons, their plans. I saved it all, waiting for someone to find it." "What's your name?" Taeho asked gently. Was Vextar, last of the Kethmoran. My people were explorers like you. We thought the galaxy was safe. We were wrong. The translation system conveyed not just words but emotions, and they could feel Vextar's deep sadness and regret. "The hegemony," Vextar continued, his voice growing weaker. "They have been watching your world, learning your weaknesses. They will come for you soon." Daesung stepped forward. "How do you know about Earth?" "Because they showed me," Vextar replied. "Before I escaped. They study every species for decades before they attack. They know your cities, your weapons, your leaders. They are preparing." Hyojin was frantically recording everything on her scanner. "How long do we have?" "Years, not decades. They move slowly, but they always move. And when they come..." Vextar's voice faded for a moment. "When they come, they bring death to everything that thinks, everything that dreams." The crystal pulsed brighter, and new displays appeared around the chamber. Star maps, ship designs, tactical information, centuries of intelligence about an enemy humanity didn't even know existed. This data, Vextar said with great effort, everything my people learned about the hegemony. You must take it. Use it. Warn your people. Tejo felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. We will, I promise. Good. Vextar's eyes began to close again. The pod, failing, kept me alive this long, to pass on the warning. Now my purpose is complete. Wait, Hyejin called out. Can we help you? Our medical technology? No, Vextar smiled sadly. Too late for me, but not for you. The hegemony thinks they know everything about every species, but they have never faced humans. You might surprise them. The displays around the chamber went dark one by one as Vextar's life signs faded, but the crystal continued to pulse, and the data streams flowed steadily. He's gone, Sora announced quietly, checking the pod's readings. They stood in silence for a moment, honoring the brave alien who had waited 8 centuries to deliver his warning. Then Tejo turned to his team. We need to download everything from that crystal and get it back to Earth. The fate of humanity may depend on what we learn here. As they began connecting their equipment to the alien systems, Tejo couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy, and they had enemies they never knew existed. For 3 days, the team worked non-stop to download and analyze the data from Vextar's ship. The crystal computer contained more information than Earth's entire digital archives. Sora had managed to connect their systems to the alien technology, creating a bridge between human and Kethmaran science. Hyejin barely slept as she worked to understand the translated files. What she found made her blood run cold. Captain, you need to see this, she called from her makeshift workspace in the alien chamber. The crystal cast blue light across her tired face as she pulled up a holographic display. Tejo hurried over, followed by Daesung and Sora. The hologram showed a star system with several inhabited planets orbiting a yellow sun. This was the Velthari system, Hyejin explained, her voice hollow. Home to about 8 billion people. Watch what happened. The hologram began to move, showing massive ships entering the system. They were huge, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities. The ships moved with deadly purpose toward the inhabited worlds. The hegemony fleet, Hyejin continued. They didn't try to communicate or negotiate, they just attacked. What followed was systematic destruction. Orbital bombardment turned cities to ash. Atmosphere processors stripped the air from entire planets. Within hours, 8 billion lives were ended. This is what they do, Hyejin said quietly. World after world, species after species. The data shows dozens of civilizations, all destroyed the same way. Daesung stared at the display with horror. How many people? Trillions, Hyejin replied. Over the past 1,000 years, the hegemony has wiped out 43 different intelligent species. Entire star systems left empty. Sora pulled up another file. But why? What do they want? The answer came in the form of another hologram, a map of the galaxy with red zones marking hegemony territory. It was growing, expanding outward like a cancer. They call it the Great Unification, Hyejin explained. Their goal is to bring all intelligent life under their control. Species that submit become slaves. Those that resist are eliminated. Tejo studied the map. The red zone was massive, covering nearly a quarter of the galaxy, and at its edge, uncomfortably close, was a small yellow dot marking Earth's location. How long have they known about us, he asked. Hyejin brought up a new file and Tejo's heart sank. The display showed Earth from space, but not as it looked today. This was Earth from decades ago, when humanity had just begun sending radio signals into space. They've been watching us for 70 years, Hyejin said. The data includes detailed studies of our technology, our military capabilities, even our social structures. More files appeared, surveillance footage of Earth's major cities, analysis of human weapons, psychological profiles of world leaders. The level of detail was terrifying. They know everything about us, Daesung whispered. Our defenses, our weaknesses, where we live. It gets worse, Hyejin said, pulling up a tactical assessment. According to this analysis, the hegemony considers humanity to be a minimal threat species. They rate our technology as primitive and our military as disorganized. Sora was reading through technical specifications. Look at their ships. Energy shields that can deflect nuclear weapons. Weapons that can crack continents. Faster than light travel that makes our best ships look like toys. The weight of what they were learning settled over them like a shroud. Humanity wasn't just facing an enemy, they were facing annihilation, by a force beyond their ability to resist. When? Taeho asked simply. Hyejin found the invasion timeline. The assessment was completed 5 years ago. Standard hegemony procedure calls for a 10-year preparation period before invasion. That gives us 5 years, maybe less. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of the crystal. 5 years to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed dozens of civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Wait, Sora said suddenly, pulling up a different file. Look at this. It's a psychological analysis of the species they've conquered. The new display showed detailed breakdowns of how each civilization had responded to the hegemony invasion. The pattern was depressingly similar. Initial resistance followed by surrender when the scale of hegemony power became clear. They're not just militarily superior, Sora continued. They're psychological warfare experts. They study their targets for decades, learning exactly how to break their will to fight. Dae-sung pointed to one section of the analysis. What's this about infiltration? Hyejin pulled up the relevant files. The hegemony doesn't just attack from outside. They plant agents among target populations years before the invasion. These agents work to create division, spread fear, and undermine resistance efforts. You mean they might already have agents on Earth? Taeho asked. It's likely, Hyejin confirmed. The psychological profile suggests they would focus on government leaders, military commanders, and influential media figures. The implications were staggering. Not only was humanity facing an overwhelmingly powerful enemy, but that enemy might already be working to destroy them from within. But then Sora found something different. Captain, look at this. It's an analysis of why their previous invasions succeeded. But there's something strange about it. She pulled up a comparison chart showing the various species the hegemony had conquered. Each entry included detailed behavioral profiles and tactical assessments. Every species they've defeated had certain characteristics in common, Sora explained. They were either highly unified civilizations with centralized command structures, or they were peaceful species with limited military experience. Taeho studied the data. What makes those characteristics advantageous to the hegemony? Unified species are predictable, Hyejin realized, understanding where Sora was going. If you can control or eliminate the central leadership, the entire civilization crumbles. And peaceful species don't know how to fight a war of survival. Sora nodded excitedly. But look at the human assessment. We don't fit either pattern. She brought up the hegemony's analysis of human civilization. Instead of the neat, organized profiles of other species, the human assessment was filled with contradictions and uncertainties. They can't figure us out, Sora continued. We have hundreds of separate governments that often fight each other. Our military doctrines vary wildly from nation to nation. We've been fighting wars continuously for our entire recorded history. Dae-sung was reading over the assessment. They classify us as unpredictably chaotic. Is that good or bad? It's unprecedented, Hyejin replied, studying the data more carefully. Every other species they conquered was either unified or peaceful. We're neither. Taeho felt a spark of hope for the first time since they'd entered the ship. They've never faced an enemy like us? Look at this. Sora pointed to a section of the analysis marked in what the translator indicated was frustration. They tried to model human behavior for invasion planning, but their computer simulations keep producing wildly different results. The hegemony assessment noted that humans were simultaneously capable of great cooperation and terrible violence, often within the same population groups. Human military tactics ranged from highly sophisticated to seemingly insane. Human technology developed in unexpected directions. They're used to enemies they can understand and predict, Hyejin said. We might be the first species that genuinely confuses them. As they continued reading, more anomalies appeared. The hegemony had never faced guerrilla warfare because every other species they'd conquered had fought traditional battles. They'd never encountered enemies who used suicide attacks because other species valued individual survival above victory. They'd never dealt with populations that could continue fighting even after their governments were destroyed. We're not stronger than them, Tejo said slowly. But we might be something they've never encountered before, completely unpredictable. For the first time since discovering the ship, they had something resembling hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. We need to get this information to Earth immediately, Tejo decided, and we need to make sure our leaders understand that our greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's the fact that we're impossible to figure out. The crystal pulsed brighter, as if approving of their conclusion. Vextar's sacrifice had given them more than just a warning. It had given them the key to humanity's potential survival. The decision to leave was the hardest Tejo had ever made. The alien ship contained technology that could advance human civilization by centuries, but they couldn't stay to study it. Time was running out, and Earth needed to be warned. Are you sure about this? Sora asked as she finished downloading the last of the critical files. We're leaving behind the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. The greatest discovery is worthless if there's no humanity left to benefit from it, Tejo replied grimly. He was staring at the crystal, knowing they might never see anything like it again. Hai-Jin sealed the data storage units that contained Vextar's warning. The information we have is more valuable than the ship itself. We have their fleet compositions, their tactical doctrines, their technology specifications, everything we need to prepare a defense. But before they could leave, Sora made one final discovery that changed everything. Captain, look at this, she called from where she was disconnecting their equipment from the alien systems. The ship's computer has been running continuous scans of local space. It detected something 3 days ago. The display showed a star map of the surrounding systems. Red dots marked the positions of ships that definitely weren't human. Hegemony, scouts, Hai-Jin identified, reading the sensor data. 5 ships, long-range reconnaissance class. They're mapping human shipping routes. Daesung studied the tactical display. They're already here. The invasion timeline has moved up. Tejo felt cold fear in his stomach. If hegemony scouts were already operating near human space, they had even less time than expected. How long until they detect us? Sora was running calculations on her portable computer. Their patrol patterns suggest they'll sweep the system in about 6 hours. We need to leave now. They gathered their equipment and headed back through the ship's corridors toward the breach they'd entered through. But as they reached the opening, Hai-Jin stopped suddenly. Wait. The ship's computer is trying to tell us something. The symbols along the corridor walls were pulsing in a new pattern, and the translation system activated one final time. Warning. Hegemony proximity detected. Initiating emergency protocols. The ship began to change around them. Sections of hull that had been damaged sealed themselves completely. New armor plating slid into place over vulnerable areas. Weapon systems that had been dormant for 8 centuries hummed to life. It's preparing for battle, Sora realized with wonder. After all this time, it still wants to fight. But that wasn't all. The ship's computer had one final gift for them. Technical specifications began downloading to their portable systems. Shield generators, weapon designs, and most importantly, propulsion technology. This is incredible, Sora breathed as she watched the data flow. With these designs, we could upgrade the Bekdu to be 10 times more effective. They hurried back to their ship as the alien vessel continued its awakening. By the time they reached the Bekdu, Sora was already planning modifications. The shield generators are compact enough to fit in our cargo bay, she announced as they lifted off from the moon's surface. And these weapon systems, Captain, we could actually fight back if we encounter those scouts. How long for the modifications? Tejo asked, already knowing they didn't have much time. 18 hours if we work nonstop. The ship's fabrication systems can handle most of the construction, but we'll need to manually integrate the control systems. As the Baekdu accelerated away from the moon, they could see the alien ship beginning to glow brighter. Whatever it was preparing for, Vexitar's vessel wasn't going to go quietly. "Set course for Earth maximum speed," Taeho ordered, "and start those modifications immediately." The next 18 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Sora worked without rest, using the alien technical specifications to build hybrid systems that combined human engineering with Kethmaran technology. Hyejin helped where she could, while Daesung stood watch for any signs of pursuit. The shield generator was the first system they completed. When Sora activated it, a faint shimmer surrounded the Baekdu's hull. "Energy shield at 15%, she announced proudly. "Not as strong as a full hegemony system, but it should stop most weapons fire." The weapon modifications took longer. The alien energy cannons required a complete redesign of the ship's power grid, but Sora managed to install 2 of them in place of the Baekdu's original laser array. "These fire-concentrated plasma bursts," she explained as she ran final tests. "One shot should be enough to disable a ship the size of ours." But the most important upgrade was to their engines. The Kethmaran propulsion technology was far more efficient than human designs, increasing their speed by 50%. "We'll reach Earth in 4 months instead of 6, Sora announced as the new engines came online. That might make all the difference. They were 3 days out from the Kepler system when they encountered their first hegemony patrol. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Daesung announced from his sensor station. "Single ship, scout class." On the main screen, they could see a sleek vessel with the distinctive angular design of hegemony construction. It was smaller than the Baekdu, but clearly more advanced. "Are they scanning us?" Taeho asked. "Yes, sir, but our new shields are interfering with their sensors. They're reading us as a mineral survey ship." The hegemony scout changed course to intercept them. Taeho felt sweat on his palms as he realized they were about to face their first test against humanity's future enemy. "They're hailing us," Hyejin announced. "Audio only." The bridge filled with alien speech, harsh, guttural sounds that their translation system couldn't interpret. But the meaning was clear enough. "Stop and prepare to be boarded." "Captain?" Daesung asked, his hand hovering over the weapons controls. Taeho made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Fire. The alien energy cannon spoke for the first time, sending a lance of brilliant plasma across space. The hegemony scout's shields flared and collapsed under the unexpected assault. A second shot punched through its hull, and the ship exploded in a ball of superheated gas. The bridge was silent for a long moment. "First blood to humanity," Daesung said quietly. "Log it as a space debris collision," Taeho ordered. "If anyone asks, we never saw anything." But he knew they had just crossed another line. Humanity was now actively at war with the hegemony, whether Earth knew it or not. Over the following weeks, they encountered 2 more scout ships. Each time, the alien vessels were destroyed before they could report the Baekdu's true nature. But Taeho knew their luck wouldn't hold forever. "They're going to notice that their scouts aren't reporting back," Hyejin pointed out during one of their planning sessions. "Good," Taeho replied grimly. "Let them wonder what happened. Confusion is one of our few advantages." The Baekdu raced through space toward Earth, carrying the most important cargo in human history. In their databanks were the secrets to humanity's survival, if they could reach home in time. Behind them, the galaxy was already beginning to change. The hegemony had lost contact with 3 scout ships in the same region. Their invasion timeline was being moved up again. The race was on, and the fate of 2 species hung in the balance. The Baekdu emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system after 4 months of hard travel. Taeho had never been so happy to see the familiar sight of his home system, but his relief was mixed with dread. How do you tell an entire species that they're about to face extinction? "Sol Control, this is exploration vessel Baekdu requesting priority approach clearance," Daesung transmitted from the communication station. The response came back immediately. "Baekdu, you're 3 months ahead of schedule. Is everything all right out there?" Taeho took the microphone. "Sol Control, we need to speak with Earth Defense Command immediately. We have critical intelligence regarding an imminent threat to planetary security. There was a long pause before Soul Control responded. Stand by, Bektu. You're being transferred to military channels. Within hours, they were docked at Luna Station, the massive military complex orbiting Earth's moon. Tejo found himself in a sterile briefing room facing a panel of Earth's highest-ranking military and political leaders. Admiral Chen Wei, head of Earth Defense Command, leaned forward across the conference table. Captain Kim, your report claims that Earth faces invasion by an alien empire. That's a very serious accusation. It's not an accusation, Admiral, Tejo replied calmly. It's a fact. We have proof. He-Jin activated the holographic display system, and the room filled with images from Vextar's database. The destruction of the Velthari system played out in horrifying detail. This is what the hegemony does to civilizations that resist them, she explained. 43 species have been eliminated over the past 1,000 years. Secretary of State Williams shook her head. This could be fabricated. How do we know this isn't some kind of hoax? Sora stood up. Because of this. She activated her scanner and the readings showed energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Our ship has been upgraded with alien technology. We can demonstrate capabilities that human science can't explain. General Morrison, head of Global Military Command, studied the technical specifications Sora had provided. Even if this is real, what you're suggesting is impossible. We can't fight an enemy with technology centuries ahead of ours. That's exactly what every other species thought, Tejo replied. And that's why they all lost. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, Earth's chief xenobiologist, had been studying the biological data from the database. The genetic diversity here is incredible. Each of these extinct species had completely different evolutionary paths, different social structures, different ways of thinking. How could one empire defeat them all? He-Jin brought up the hegemony's tactical doctrine. Because they follow the same strategy every time. They study their targets for decades, learning their weaknesses. Then they attack in the way most likely to cause quick surrender. But we have nuclear weapons, protested Defense Minister Kumar. Surely that changes the equation. Sora shook her head. The hegemony has energy shields that can deflect nuclear blasts. Our most powerful weapons are toys to them. The room fell silent as the scope of the threat became clear. Finally, Admiral Lai Chen spoke up. What do you recommend we do? If they're as powerful as you claim, resistance seems futile. No, Tejo said firmly. That's exactly the kind of thinking that doomed the other species. Yes, they're more advanced than us. Yes, they're more powerful. But they've never faced anything like humanity. He gestured to He-Jin, who brought up the hegemony's psychological assessment of Earth. Look at their analysis of us. Tejo continued. They can't figure us out. Every other species they conquered was either unified and predictable, or peaceful and unprepared. We're chaotic, violent, and completely unpredictable. General Morrison was reading through the assessment. They classify our military doctrine as impossibly inconsistent. Is that supposed to be good? It's the best thing we have going for us, Daesung spoke up. They've spent decades studying us, but they still can't predict how we'll react to invasion. Dr. Hayes pointed to another section of the analysis. They note that humans have unprecedented variability in individual behavior. They can't understand how we can be so cooperative and so combative at the same time. Because they've never encountered a species like us, He-Jin explained. Every civilization they've destroyed was essentially a larger version of a single culture. We have hundreds of different cultures, each with its own way of fighting. Secretary Williams was still skeptical. Even if we're unpredictable, how does that help us against superior technology? Sora activated another display showing tactical scenarios. Because unpredictability is a force multiplier. If they can't predict our actions, they can't counter them effectively. She showed them examples from the database of how other species had fought the hegemony. Each resistance had followed predictable patterns, centralized command structures, conventional battles, attempts to match hegemony technology with their own. They always fought the hegemony's kind of war, Sora continued. But what if we fight our kind of war? Admiral Chen was beginning to understand. Guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, hit-and-run attacks. Exactly, Taeho confirmed. The hegemony has never faced an enemy that would blow up their own cities to deny them to the invaders. They've never dealt with populations that keep fighting even after their governments surrender. Defense Minister Kumar looked troubled. You're talking about a war of total resistance. The casualties would be enormous. The casualties of surrender would be worse, Hyejin replied grimly. The hegemony doesn't take prisoners. They eliminate or enslave entire populations. Dr. Hayes had found something interesting in the biological data. Look at this. Every species they conquered had relatively uniform genetics. But humans have incredible genetic diversity. We might literally be harder for them to understand on a biological level. There's something else, Sora added, pulling up technical specifications. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly standardized. They use the same ships, the same weapons, the same tactics across their entire empire. General, Morrison saw where she was going. Standardization creates predictability. If we can figure out how their standard systems work, we can develop countermeasures, Sora finished. Their shields might stop nuclear weapons, but what about biological weapons, chemical attacks, cyber warfare? The mood in the room was shifting from despair to something resembling hope. Admiral Chen leaned back in his chair. You're suggesting we can't beat them with superior technology, but we might be able to beat them with superior unpredictability. The hegemony has spent 1,000 years perfecting the art of defeating civilized, rational enemies, Taeho said. But we're not always civilized or rational. Sometimes we're just too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Secretary Williams was taking notes rapidly. This changes our entire defense strategy. Instead of trying to match their capabilities, we focus on being impossible to predict or control. But there's one more thing, Hyejin said quietly. The timeline has moved up. Our encounter with their scout ships means they know something happened in the Kepler system. They'll be investigating. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. How long do we have? 2 years, maybe 3, Taeho replied. Not the 5 we originally thought. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a physical force. 2 years to prepare humanity for the fight of its existence. Then we'd better get started, Admiral Chen said, standing up. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, Earth is on a war footing. We have a species to save. As the meeting broke up and plans began to form, Taeho felt a mixture of fear and pride. Fear for what was coming, but pride in how quickly humanity was adapting to the threat. The hegemony thought they understood humans. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 months after the Luna Station briefing, Earth had transformed into something unrecognizable. The blue marble that had been humanity's peaceful home was now a fortress preparing for the fight of its existence. Taeho stood on the observation deck of the orbital shipyard above Mars, watching the construction of humanity's new fleet. The ships being built bore little resemblance to the exploration vessels of the past. These were weapons of war, designed using the hybrid technology salvaged from Vextar's ship. The new Sol-class destroyers are performing better than expected, Sora reported, joining him at the window. As Earth's new director of alien technology integration, she had been working 18-hour days for months. The combination of human engineering and Keth-Moran shield technology is giving us ships that can actually survive hegemony weapons fire. Below them, dozens of ships were under construction. Each one incorporated lessons learned from the alien database, but adapted to human manufacturing capabilities and tactical doctrines. How many will be ready when they come? Taeho asked. 200 combat vessels plus support ships, Sora replied. It's not much compared to what the hegemony can field, but it's 200 more than any other species had. Hyejin's voice came over their communicators. Captain, you need to see this. I'm sending coordinates to Conference Room 7. They made their way through the station's corridors to find Hyejin surrounded by holographic displays showing tactical simulations. But these weren't the clean, predictable battle scenarios that military planners usually studied. I've been working with psychologists and game theorists to develop new combat doctrines, she explained. Look at this. The display showed a hegemony fleet approaching a human colony. Instead of the expected defensive formation, the human ships, scattered in seemingly random directions, only to regroup in unexpected locations and attack weak points in the enemy formation. Controlled chaos, Yejin continued. Each ship captain has general objectives, but complete freedom in how to achieve them. The hegemony can't predict our tactics because we don't know what we're going to do until we do it. Dae-sung entered the room carrying a tablet full of reports. As humanity's new director of irregular warfare, he had been tasked with planning Earth's ground defense. The resistance cells are in place, he announced. Every major city, every strategic resource, every transportation hub. If the hegemony lands troops, they'll face opposition from populations that refuse to be conquered. The transformation hadn't been easy. For months, the governments of Earth had struggled to accept the reality of the threat. Some had wanted to negotiate with the hegemony. Others had proposed hiding in deep space until the danger passed. But slowly, as the evidence became undeniable, humanity had done what it did best, adapted and prepared to fight. The Biological Warfare Division has made a breakthrough, Sora continued. Since the hegemony has never encountered human pathogens, they have no natural immunity. Dr. Martinez thinks we can develop weapons that will be devastatingly effective against them. Taeho felt a chill at the casual mention of biological weapons, but he understood the necessity. This wasn't a war for territory or resources. It was a war for survival. What about the cyber warfare program? He asked. Hyejin pulled up another set of displays. The hegemony's technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also highly networked. If we can penetrate their computer systems, we might be able to turn their own technology against them. The hologram showed simulations of hegemony ships being disabled by computer viruses, their weapons turning on their own fleet. It was theoretical, but it represented hope. There's something else, Dae-sung said quietly. Intelligence reports suggest the hegemony has started moving forces toward our sector. They're not waiting for the original invasion timeline. Taeho's stomach dropped. How long? 18 months, maybe less, Dae-sung replied. Their advanced scouts have been reporting irregularities in this region. The loss of their reconnaissance ships has made them suspicious. Sora brought up a display showing the current state of Earth's defenses. It was impressive for 18 months of work, but still looked pitifully small compared to what they would face. We have 200 ships, orbital defense platforms around every major world, and resistance networks on every colony, she summarized. But against a force that has conquered dozens of civilizations, we have something they've never faced before, Taeho interrupted. We have humanity. He gestured to the displays around them, the chaotic battle simulations, the unconventional weapons, the networks of determined resistance fighters. Every other species they conquered tried to beat the hegemony at their own game. Advanced technology, unified command, predictable tactics. We're not even trying to play their game. Hyejin nodded. The psychological profiles are clear. The hegemony expects enemies to behave rationally, to surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. But humans are too stupid to know when they're beaten. Dae-sung finished with a grim smile. It had become an unofficial motto among Earth's defense forces. When faced with impossible odds, humans had a tendency to fight anyway, just to see what would happen. The industrial conversion is complete, Sora reported. Every factory, every shipyard, every research facility is now dedicated to the war effort. We're producing weapons and ships faster than any civilization in the database. The transformation had been total. Earth's economy had shifted overnight from peaceful commerce to military production. Children learned tactical thinking alongside mathematics. Universities offered degrees in xenobiology with a focus on enemy weaknesses. What about morale? Taeho asked. Surprisingly good, Dae-sung replied. People are scared, but they're also angry. The idea that some alien empire thinks it can just wipe us out has unified humanity in a way nothing else ever has. It was true. The threat from the hegemony had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy had failed to achieve: a truly united human race. Political boundaries still existed, but they had become secondary to the survival of the species. He-Jin pulled up the latest intelligence reports. We've also been reaching out to other species in the region. Some of them might be willing to ally with us against the hegemony. Any luck? Taeho asked. Mixed results, she admitted. Most are too terrified to help openly. But a few are providing intelligence, and some have agreed to provide safe haven for our ships if we need to retreat and regroup. The meeting was interrupted by an emergency alert. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main display, broadcasting from Earth Defense Command. All department heads, immediate conference, he announced grimly. We have a situation. Within minutes, they were connected to a secure communications link with military leaders across the solar system. The news was not good. Long-range sensors have detected a hegemony fleet, Admiral Chen announced. 150 ships approaching from the direction of the Kepler system. Estimated arrival time: 14 months. The room fell silent. After all their preparation, the moment they had been dreading was finally approaching. Size comparison to previous hegemony invasion forces? Someone asked. Admiral Chen consulted his notes. Smaller than average. The database suggests they typically use 500 to 1,000 ships for planetary conquest. They're underestimating us, He-Jin realized, just like they underestimated every other species. Taeho felt a fierce smile cross his face. Good. Let them think we're not a threat. It'll make the surprise even bigger when we start shooting back. Over the following days, Earth's preparation entered its final phase. The approaching hegemony fleet had been designated Target Alpha, and every human ship, weapon, and soldier was being positioned to give them a welcome they would never forget. But perhaps the most important preparation was psychological. Across human space, a message was being broadcast. A message that would have seemed insane to any previous civilization facing the hegemony. They think they know us, the message said. They think they understand what humans will do when faced with extinction. They're wrong. We're not like the others. We don't surrender. We don't break. We adapt, we fight, and we win. They want to see what humanity is capable of? Let's show them. The die was cast. In 14 months, two very different philosophies would meet in battle. The hegemony's 1,000 years of experience against humanity's refusal to accept the impossible. Taeho looked out at the ships being prepared for war and felt something he hadn't expected: excitement. After centuries of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, they were about to get their answer in the most dramatic way possible. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never underestimate a species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and reality television. The hegemony was coming. Humanity was ready.